Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting of the Services Delegated Committee. Before we commence the meeting, I request that all mobile phones be turned off or turned to silent, please. Thank you very much. My name is Councillor Di Gillies and I chair this committee. I will start by introducing my fellow councillors. To my left at the horseshoe table in the chamber are Councillor Jim Park, Councillor Cynthia Watson, Councillor Nick Stavrou, Councillor Wes Galt, our Mayor Councillor Felicity Sinfield, and on the opposite side, our Deputy Mayor Councillor Lisa Hollingsworth, Councillor Gary Thompson, Councillor Jane Addis. I also acknowledge our CEO, Mr Philip Storer, to my right, and our Coordinator of Governance, Ms Kirsten Ritchie, to my left. There are other officers in attendance and they'll be introduced as they present reports. Now, a brief introduction. The purpose of the Services Delegated Committee is to deal with matters relating to the provision of human and physical resources and council's infrastructure. For those in the gallery presenting this evening, when we come to the relevant agenda item, it will be introduced by an officer. I will then call you one by one to come forward and address council. I will ask speakers to sit at the top of the horseshoe table and invite those against the officer's recommendation to speak first, followed by those in favour. When making a submission, you are requested to present your viewpoint clearly and concisely on what you agree or disagree with the proposal. You may suggest an alternative approach if that will satisfy those concerns too. Please do not repeat what earlier speakers have said and keep the discussion focused on relevant issues. There's a limit of 3 minutes for each speaker, and that includes councillors. As chairperson, I reserve the right to vary that. At the 2.5 minute mark, I will ring that bell to indicate you have 30 seconds left and you need to conclude your presentation, please. After you've spoken, please remain at the table in case anyone has any questions for you. Apologies. Ms Ritchie, are there any apologies for this evening?
Thank you, and through you, Chair, there are 2 apologies for tonight's meeting, Councillor Bigger and Councillor Franco.
Thank you. Now we go to the order of business on our agenda. Adoption and confirmation of the minutes of the Services Delegated Committee meeting held on the 9th of October 2023. Councillors, can I please have a motion to adopt and confirm those minutes? Councillor Stavrou?
So moved.
Thank you. And Councillor Hollingsworth?
Happy to second, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone opposed to that? No, I put the motion to the vote. I declare that motion carried. Thank you. Item 2, declaration of conflict of interest of any councillor or council officer. Are there any conflicts of interest that anyone would need to foreshadow regarding matters onto the agenda tonight? I don't see anything. Great, let's proceed. Item 3, presentation of officer reports. 3.1, consideration and submissions of the proposed sale of Serples Lane Car Park to Swinburne University. Mr Michael Hutchins, Head of Strategic Property and Revenue, will be presenting this, accompanied by Ms Amy Montalti. Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The purpose of the report before you is to consider submissions received regarding the proposal to sell and transfer part of the Serples Lane Car Park to Swinburne University of Technology and seek a resolution from the Services Delegated Committee to proceed with the sale of the property to Swinburne. By way of background, the council-owned Serples Lane Car Park is approximately 2,908 square metres and is located at 399 Billwood Road in Hawthorn. It is shown shaded yellow in attachment 3 of your agenda papers. Consistent with the 25 July 2022 Council resolution, work to prepare the car park for sale has progressed. Recently, at its meeting of 25 September 2023, Council resolved to give notice of its intention to sell the property to Swinburne via private treaty for $16 million and called for submissions on the proposed sale. In summary, at the conclusion of the exhibition period, Council received a total of 108 submissions, including 2 that were late, with the majority being received through Council's Engage portal. Of these submissions, 21 support the proposed sale of the property, 80 are opposed to the proposed sale of the property, 4 were considered mixed, and 3 were considered neutral. All received submissions are presented as they were received in Attachment 1. Attachment 2 contains a submission from Swinburne which outlines their vision for the property. The submissions received that opposed the proposal raised a number of topics which have been summarised and are responded to in Table 1 of your agenda papers. The report highlights that Council is entitled to sell land by private treaty rather than through a public process where the private treaty is sufficiently unique to justify the decision. In selling Serpils Lane car park to Swinburne, Council is ensuring a price equivalent to or greater than market value, securing an additional 37 car spaces above and beyond the requirements of the planning scheme, as well as controlling the development outcome to an extent that is unlikely to be achieved by a sale through a public process. The report concludes this represents a unique and compelling offer for Council. It is therefore recommended that Council proceed with the sale. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Now, we have 11 people who have indicated they wish to make a submission on the matter. 9 opposed the recommendation and 2 in support. Can I first call Mrs. Montserrat Pesmenti, please, who will be followed by Mr. Anthony Solarera, I beg your pardon. Mrs. Pesmenti? Yep. Hello. So if you can just introduce yourself, please, and then you have your 3 minutes. Don't fall off the chair.
It's moving. Okay, my name is Montserrat Pesmenti, 50 years resident of 51 in Hawthorne, and I am currently the secretary of the Glenferrie Traders Association. I oppose the sale of Serpils Lane car park, and I better read instead of talk. The Serpils Lane car park, open space in Hawthorne, was created over 100 years ago by small parcels of land subdivided for shops from all mansions. The city of Hawthorne acquired or came about with 4 titles of those parcels of land. That's over 100 years ago. By a special levy, 399 Burwood Road land, which was 1 shop, was acquired in the 1960s to give access to the shops or to the real land. Once the amalgamation of Kew, Hawthorne and Camberwell resulted in the city of Boroondara, the situation changed, and some 15 years ago, the Glenferrie Road traders had to fight for Wakefield car park land not to be sold to Swinburne, and today, once again, we are fighting for Serpils Lane car park and the access to it not to be sold. It is a moral right of the ratepayers to maintain open space in such a valuable and critical location, and a need for the area to preserve the future of this strategic piece of public land. Glenferrie Burwood Road needs the open space and the car park for the future of a suburb and of future generations. The prospective purchase of the Serpils Lane by Swinburne had it incorporated in Swinburne's 2005 master plan as per page 42 of the City of Boroondara structure plan for Glenferrie Heart of Hawthorne, adopted by this council on 16th of August 2010. Page 95 of Swinburne in today's submission says rental offerings for students, staff and visitors. What about the Glenferrie Road traders' interests? Page 100 says, we will not use our Swinburne open space, but if we purchase, we will use our public space. Page 92, the building is around 10 stories, as one of the objectors to the sale mentions on the soil works of 4 years ago. Finally, why the consultation of 74% against the sale is not an indicative of the community desires. We said 74% of the people that responded.
Thank you. We
Thank
are
you for
out of
listening
time.
to me.
If you'd like to just hold for a minute. Councillors, does anyone have any questions of Mrs. Pasamenti? Doesn't look like. Thank you very much. You may return to the
Thank you.
gallery. Thank you.
Thanks.
And our second speaker, Mr. Anthony Stolarek, who will be followed by Ms. Antonia Fleming.
Hi, my name is Anthony Stolarek, resident. Glenferrie traders and residents have serious concerns about the proposal currently before the council to sell the land currently known as the Serpils Lane car park. Glenferrie traders have a long-standing stake and interest in the Serpils Lane car park and its maintenance as a car park servicing the Glenferrie Road, Burwood Road shopping precinct and Glenferrie Station, which plays such an important role in the movement of people through the shopping precinct. Given the historic dealings between the council and its predecessors and the traders over the site, and particularly the agreement reached with traders and the council and its predecessor to finance the purchase of the land as access to the site, it's not clear to us why the council now considers itself free unilaterally to walk away from a previous arrangement without any meaningful arrangement with traders and the community. Given that the site was acquired at the local traders' initiative to perfect the car park using their own money, it seems unlikely that the council is the beneficial owner of the entire car park, untrammelled by other interests. The council's own lawyers have noted the likely existence of a public interest trust, given the circumstances surrounding the lane's acquisition. Under a sale to the Swinburne University, is it really proposed that the lane, which the traders initiated to provide access and financed, will be effectively gifted to the Swinburne University purchaser? The council holds its land as custodian for residents and can only exercise its ownership rights for the public good and in accordance with laws and policies. The Department of Planning and Community Development Best Practice Guideline for the Sale, Exchange and Transfer of Land makes it clear at page 7 that councils should ensure that land that is offered for sale in a manner that will ensure the maximum price is achieved while protecting both the council and the public interest. I state that there hasn't been adequate public consultation about the proposal, nor has there been any meaningful engagement with local traders, despite the agreements made between the council and local traders about the use of the site and the material investment traders made on the strength of a shared understanding as to its future operation as a public car park. The traders ask that public engagement takes place before any steps are taken to alter the current use of the site and its availability for the shopping precinct. Traders have been hitherto reluctant to take more formal steps to protect their interests, but traders will have to contemplate such steps if that is absolutely necessary in the absence of proper council engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Stolarek? No, thank you. You may return to the gallery. Next we have Ms. Antonia Fleming, who will be followed by Mrs. Cecilia Delbato. Please.
Hi, I'm Antonia. I've been a lifetime resident of Boroondara, predominantly in Hawthorn. Serpils Lane car park, it's adjacent to Glenferrie Station. Glenferrie Station is a crucial arrival point to the Glenferrie precinct. Glenferrie Station is a major station on the Lilydale, Belgrave and Alamein train line. Express trains stop only at Glenferrie and Camberwell, and they skip all other Boroondara train stations. The station has an average patronage of 6,500 people per day on a normal weekday. Swinburne University currently sits alongside the Glenferrie precinct, sprawling east of Glenferrie Station and flanking both sides of the railway line. The Glenferrie Place Plan describes the station as an important gateway for both Glenferrie Road and Swinburne University. However, if Swinburne University purchases Serpils Lane car park and develops the site that is immediately adjacent to this Glenferrie station, the arrival at the station will now feel like an arrival at Swinburne University. Swinburne University will no longer be alongside the Glenferrie precinct and a part of Hawthorn. Swinburne University will now feel like it is the Glenferrie precinct when you arrive in the area. There must be a balance between the university and the local community. The sale of the land to Swinburne University tips the balance. The land is in the heart of the Glenferrie precinct. I'm not opposed to the growth and expansion of the university. The gateway to the Glenferrie precinct should remain with the local community of Boroondara. Please do not ignore the 74.1% of the community that do not agree to the proposed sale of the land. The Glenferrie Place Plan vision is for a vibrant and accessible place where everyone feels welcome. Swinburne University buildings surrounding the Glenferrie Station gateway to the precinct is not welcoming to the broader community. While the university indicates they will provide public spaces, they will still be part of the university essentially, and the public will not feel like it's their space. Having said all this about the significance of Glenferrie Station being a gateway, the area is not presently maximised by Boroondara as such a critical gateway. The Glenferrie Place Plan clearly recognises this and specifies that the Glenferrie precinct has run-down public spaces and laneways, particularly around the Glenferrie station. The plan also recognises a lack of public spaces for community to meet and hold events, and it also recognises issues regarding cyclist safety and public transport interconnectivity. A reimagined Serpils Lane car park can bring vitality to the Glenferrie station laneways, create a public space and be a point of transport interconnectivity. This would address Initiative 3 at the cutting edge, Initiative 5 station laneways and Initiative 9 sustainable access of the Glenferrie Place Plan. The sale of Serpils Lane car park is based on council officers' conclusion that the car park is underutilised. However, the future opportunities to utilise this critical gateway in our ever-growing and evolving community have not been fully envisaged and considered. Do not sell this gateway.
Thank you, Ms Fleming. Just 1 minute, please, in case there's any questions. Does anyone have anything to ask Ms Fleming? No. Thank you very much. You may return to the gallery. Mrs Del Beato, who will be followed by Leon Pesamenti.
Hello, I'm Cecilia Del Beato, also a resident of Hawthorn. This presentation is on behalf of Jane Laley Nathan, who is thankful for the opportunity to have her statement read by me. The local government legislation mandates good management and planning for the future well-being of the community by the council. Serpils Lane is central. It's adjacent to Glenferrie Station and accessible from Burwood Road. It is 80 metres from Glenferrie Road and there's easy access to Glenferrie Oval and the Rec Centre. Neglected for decades, it has been monopolised by Swinburne students and staff. Was this good management on behalf of our community? What about the monetary loss? This land has been overlooked for too long, but that is no reason to get rid of it and deny future community use. It's a very important resource, a central breathing space for the occupants of the adjoining high-rise apartments. This valuable location mustn't be lost to our community. It begs the question as to why the 2,900 square metres was overlooked. To dispose of this land for a neat financial opportunity now means forsaking the fast-growing needs of an ever denser residential, retail, entertainment and commercial precinct in the heart of Hawthorn. Councillors, we respectfully suggest that you put the community first by recommending that Council not sell Serpils Lane car park until an integrated strategic plan has been drawn up, respecting the endeavours of our forebears who helped purchase this central space and with a vision to ensure the benefit of the Glenferrie precinct to the entire community. Thank you, councillors, for this opportunity to present to your community.
Thank you, Mrs Del Beato. Does anyone have any questions? No. Thank you very much. You may return to the gallery. And with Mr Leon Pesamenti, who will be followed by Philip Slattery.
My name's Leon Pesamenti. Thank you, councillors, for the wonderful work you do, and you're doing it at very little cost to the community. I disagree with the sale of the land at Serpils Lane. I'm not going to read my statement. I feel very emotional about this. I can't see how people in the past have gone out of their way, bought some land to make the car park useful to all of us, and how you people can stand there and propose to sell it. It's our heritage, right? It's our children's right to have a car park there, possibly have a green open space there. That's it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions of Mr Pesamenti? No. Thank you. You may return to the gallery. Thank you. Mr Slattery, followed please by Mr Peter Davey.
Thank you. My name is Philip Slattery and I live just off Glenferrie Road near the land in question. As Donald Trump would say, there are two questions that need to be answered. First of all, should the land be sold? And two, are we getting the best deal? I oppose the sale for these reasons. Firstly, 74% of the submissions were against the sale. We live in a democratic society and the majority needs to be listened to. Otherwise, mere lip service is being given to our democratic system. Secondly, there is a total loss of 90 car parks. Any other mathematics is just hoodwinking. Swinburne has proposed a transfer of 37 car parks, but these can still be used by students of Swinburne and Swinburne staff. There is still an overall reduction of 90 car spots. Next, the proposed sale is a private one between the council and the university for $16 million. The valuation was given by a valuer. The valuer information is kept private, allegedly for confidentiality reason. Surely we need to know the methodology, and surely for such a large valuation, it would be appropriate to have another valuation done. More importantly, the proposed sale has not been put out to tender. The documentation states that emails were sent out to those who registered their interest in the sale. Now, as you know, it's adjacent to the railway station and Vic Rail is always keen to purchase land that would benefit commuters. Surely Vic Rail should have been approached. At the same time, the state government of Victoria is strongly advocating higher density housing adjacent to public transport. Surely a developer would be most interested in this site. If so, we haven't been given a figure for the increased rates that council would gain if the site were developed for units. All we've been given are figures pertaining to parking. Next, the proposed sale would add to the council's bottom line for this financial year, but the bottom line is already in surplus and this sale is unnecessary. So in summary, the proposed sale is unwanted by the constituents, it is ill-conceived, it is poorly executed and is just unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Mr Slattery? Not at this time. Thank you, Mr Slattery. You may return to the gallery. We have Mr Peter Davey next, please, also then to be followed by Mr Rob Perkins, please.
Good evening. Peter Davey, Peter Davey, Lynch Street resident of Hawthorn. Firstly, in October 2022, when the proposal was put out to rezone the car park, 95% of people rejected that proposal to rezone it. And now, as we know, 74% of people have rejected the proposal to sell the land. That's pretty strong, and I wonder what will happen at the next council elections if those numbers keep going that way. Just in terms of some numbers, the council put in paid parking, which is largely came as a result of this meeting earlier this year, so thank you for the councillors for doing that. $167,000 in revenue has been raised in 6 months. And someone at the council, kindly with their calculator, worked out that it would take 35 years to recoup $16 million. So I had a look back on 35 years. 35 years ago, the median house price in Melbourne was $122,000. Today it's $836,000. That's a 6.85% times growth. So if I go by the same calculation methods, this 3,000 square metre piece of land will be worth $109.6 million in 35 years' time. That's a hell of an investment that Swinburne are getting for their money. In June 2021, I inquired about the land at council because I was looking to buy into the arcade building that's going up there at the site. And the planning officer told me it's council land, there's nothing happening there. Now, we all know that there was legal advice sought well before June 2021 that something was happening on the site. And the previous meeting at council was discussed that people like myself should make inquiries if they're looking to invest, which I did, and which was a complete waste of time. And I then paid a deposit on $1.2 million apartment. That apartment, just like the Barrett apartments, will have floor-to-ceiling windows in bedrooms and lounges, looking at what you are now looking to sell, only about 6 metres away, if you go by the drawings that have come out, potentially into student accommodation and lecture theatres. Now, building and planning requirements in normal planning environments will have restrictions on habitable rooms. I wonder what you are going to have to be able to control what can be built looking directly into a habitable room. The Section 173 is very vague and does not go far enough at all. The building should be restricted in levels and also some clear recommendations and requirements in there for public thoroughfare and public car parks. Please come to a balance that will suit the community and the university, which does create a great, vibrant entry into Glenferrie precinct, but as the previous speaker talked about, we don't want that entry to be, this is the Swinburne train station. You might as well rename Glenferrie train station. And it is the only one that express trains stop at.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr Davey? No. Thank you, Mr Davey.
Thank you.
We have Mr Perkins next, who's followed by Mr Matthew Fail, please.
Good evening. Robert Perkins, representing Grace Park Residents Association. Our group includes residents to the west of Glenferrie Road, and we have nearly 250 households there. We've had extensive discussions on this proposal and another one coming up later this evening. Quite frankly, we're confused. We don't know what's going on in council. You've got a services delegated committee here tonight who are seriously considering selling land because we've got too many car spaces. We don't need them. In an hour's time, you've got an urban planning delegated committee which is also considering selling land on the basis that we don't have enough car spaces in Glenferrie. Now, what's going on? These spaces,
Excuse me,
these two
Mr.
locations...
Perkins. Excuse me, 1 minute. Each matter will be viewed and discussed in its own rights. Would you please be kind enough to stay focused on the Serpils Lane matter in your presentation? Thank you.
There would appear to be different objectives here, so I will stick with it and say that the land was never considered in the placemaking plan. It was always excluded, and clearly there has been an agenda in council for some time to consider options such as the one before us tonight. Our recommendation from residents is that officers should be sent back to think again. Serpils Lane could be a jewel in Burundara's crown. It needs imagination, And I'm afraid at the moment we're batting well below our average in terms of imagination with purely one option here to sell the site. It shouldn't be sold for a quick return. It would be lost to the community forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr Perkins? Thank you. You may return to the gallery. Mr Fail, followed then by Mrs Nancy Collins, please.
Good evening. My name is Matthew Fail. I am a 7-year resident of Hawthorn. I live in Lynch Street. Soon to be resident of the Arcade Apartments that Peter Davey was talking about. Look, I'll be frank. I have an axe to grind. I paid $1.2 million for something that's now not worth $1.2 million. Paid for a view, which I know you can't pay for, but in any case, I think my aggrievement is really, I think, around that being disenfranchised. I have no idea what Swinburne will do with that land. There could be a 15-storey building or whatever the maximum is. I could be looking into a student's bedroom, I could be looking into a lecture theatre, who knows? I have no control over it. So I think what I would call upon council to think about, my questions, if I ask them, are rhetorical. I don't expect answers. I know I can't ask questions. But I would ask council to consider, ensuring that there is some kind of strictures around what Swinburne can do with the land, and more than what is contained in the current document. It really just doesn't go far enough in my view. It's extremely flimsy, I think, in my view. So I think in short, that's probably my number one concern, that the amenity of myself and residents around that site is highly likely to be decreased by whatever is built on the site. The other point that I would make is really around the commerciality of the process that has been undertaken. There's been a lot of comment really around that it's fair value for the unimproved land, but what sticks out to me is there's only one buyer, and only one buyer that's allowed to purchase it at that price. If I found you 15 people tomorrow that had, that wanted to invest in that land, for $17 million, the reality is they couldn't, because they're not in the privileged position that Swinburne is, because they're an entity that does not require planning approval and can purchase the land in its current zoned form. That stands out to me as an incongruity, and it does not, it just doesn't pass the pub test in my view, to put it that way. So I think that those are, I guess, my primary concerns. And I think the other point that I know has already been made to death, but I'll make it anyway. But the traders have an equitable interest in this land. Like the point that was made earlier, that land, without that laneway, this land is worthless. You wouldn't have the land to sell if that laneway had not been purchased. Thank you. I'll call it there. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Fail. Doesn't appear to be any questions, so you may return to the gallery. Thank you. We have Mrs Nancy Collins, followed by Professor Simon Ridings.
Thank you.
Excuse me, we're one at a time, is that? That's it, you're welcome to. Are you together, or are you Professor Ridings?
This is Professor Wright. We're together though.
But, okay, did you want to speak separately, or does one person want to speak? You both have an opportunity to do each 3 minutes?
Nancy's prepared to speak for our 3 minutes and they'll be fine.
You have your own 3 minutes if you wanted to use them. Okay, all right.
Thank you. My name's Nancy Collins. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Swinburne University of Technology. Swinburne's been a very proud member of the Glenferrie community actually since 1908. Since our founding, we've grown to become a university with a strong international reputation for quality research. We're globally ranked. We connect science and technology with industry and community, and we're proud of our heritage, which covers both vocational education and higher education and higher degree by research students. We have over 30,000 students enrolled and more than 2,800 staff. Thousands of staff, students and visitors use the Hawthorn campus every week. Increasingly, it's becoming a 24/7 campus with student accommodations and as a place for the community to visit, relax, and as well as informal student study spaces open overnight. We are a major contributor to the social vibrancy and the economic success of the Glenferrie Shopping Centre, with students, staff, visitors and industry partners all actively activating the campus and the surrounds. The ripple effect to the economy is quite significant from Swinburne's place within the community. Hundreds of members of the community enjoy the use of the campus every day, including commuters through the train, high school students, our industry partners, as well as the connections that we have through our campus and through the laneways. While it's true that during the pandemic, changes have been made to the campus and how people want to use the campus, what we're seeing is that students are returning to campus in large numbers. Their needs have changed. They now want more green open spaces, more spaces to study, meet, collaborate and relax. They need fewer large lecture halls and more digitally enabled type spaces, and that's what we're investing heavily in. We're responding to the changes through a series of initiatives. For example, we're investing in the public realm. We have a new Indigenous yarning circle and learning circle, which we're building for the community to use in Wakefield Gardens. That will be available from February 2024. We're adaptively repurposing 27 John Street building to a new student 24/7 late lab, which will have informal study spaces for our students. We're creating a new campus heart in between the library and the BA building where students can meet, collaborate, study and contemplate, and we're upgrading 30 classrooms to use as hybrid blending and learning. If we're successful in purchasing the land, it will be needed for Swinburne to grow and adapt to meet the needs of our students, our researchers and our industry partners, who are all an important part of our ecosystem. We've committed to using the site for either classroom, laboratories, technology-based research facilities, spaces for industry partners. In relation to the car parking, I'm proud to say that between 2019 and 2023, just in our Wakefield car park, we increased casual parking by 72 parks, which means we switched from reserve parking to casual car parking. Currently, the average vacancy rate just in that car park alone is 24%. Actually, on a Friday, it's 49.49%. In terms of the vacancy rate for our parking underneath buildings, that averages at 27% throughout the week. So the university does have an opportunity to make sure that the parking's better utilised and that parking's available for the community, and that's what we're intending to do through our agreements under the Section 173 agreement.
Thank you. I need you to wrap your presentation up, please.
Thank you. We're continuing to explore ways to be green and to open up the pedestrian way from the Glenferrie precinct across through to the campus and the connections through laneways.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson, do you have a question?
I do, thanks, Chair. Through you to our presenters. We've heard a number of residents this evening ask about the urban development size that may come, and obviously there's little information at this point in time. How do you address the concerns about availability of natural light and open space?
Thank you for the question. In terms of the development, we've got an urban design framework which was approved by Council in late December 2021. Essentially, a large part of that is the public realm and the university's connection as a contributor to the Glenferrie precinct and the connections through to laneways. Part of that is the green spaces that we're connecting through in terms of the laneways and the Wakefield Gardens, and making sure we connect through from the gardens across the campus. So that's already a consideration, and we believe that we can enhance the space that's currently there and still maintain those strong connections and green spaces for the community.
So, if I may follow up, I'm a little bit more specific with regards to obviously the current car parking space and the density of the building that may or may not be proposed there, and how that might affect the amenity of those residential properties. Can you give any indication as to the scale, number of floors or anything like that?
So we'll work within the City of Boroondara's planning scheme when we're designing and planning the building, but just generally speaking, our urban design, from our point of view in our urban design framework, the car park in its present form is an unappealing gateway for the community and for the university, and we'll work around that. That's illustrated in our urban design framework. So if we acquire the land, we plan to maximise the opportunity the land provides for enhancing the pedestrian access along the railway walk and to Burwood Road, and integrating it into the campus and into the laneways as a very strong gateway into the campus and into the Glenferrie precinct.
I think this building's seen not just at the pedestrian scale from the residents' perspective, they're viewing it out of their living spaces further up the building. The other concerns residents, or not so much the residents, but the traders, how does this give back to the traders? Obviously, they've got a sense of loss, obviously a sense of ownership that's being sold here. How does this give back to them, aside from the car parking?
Sure, thank you. We believe that the university contributes to the economic vibrancy of the community through the students, the industry collaborations, and the footprint that we have in terms of the staff and the people who come and interact at the campus. We've certainly noticed that in a post-pandemic world, and our strategy around innovation, we're seeing more transient attraction to get the campus sticky. So I think the investments that the university is making are quite significant in creating a sticky campus and in improving the facilities for the community and for students, and I believe that that will contribute an economic benefit to the community.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Next we have Councillor Stavrou, followed by Councillor Addis, then Councillor Watson, then Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, through you, Chair. We've heard some of the residents comment that, if the land's lost, it'll be lost forever. And you obviously have some growth projections and ideas about the future. Have you thought about the event that you might not get those growth projections, and whether you'd be prepared to, in some way, contemplate, or whether you've analysed them in your analysis to, in some way, give back to the community and perhaps make the land available again in the future?
So in our urban design framework, certainly the plans for growth are there, and whether that's domestic students and or a mixture of domestic and international students. The other strong place where we're growing is actually with our commercialisation and our industry partnerships. So the research that we're doing, which is ranked quite, by global standards, quite high in the world, is focused around innovative, sustainable planet, astro and medtech. And so the university is really connecting more closely with other global universities and global industry partners, and there's that interaction and the need for those spaces, so whether they're wet labs, research facilities, state-of-the-art research facilities. So it's not just about students and student growth, it's certainly also about the research that we're doing, which contributes at a global scale in a ranked way. In terms of the space, through our urban design framework is absolutely the intention that the campus form part of the community, and that through Wakefield Gardens, the green paths and the interaction of the community and the campus is sort of seamless, so that we do want members of the community to come in to experience the campus and to experience the facilities at the campus.
One more?
Yes. Look, I do understand and appreciate that, but nothing is risk-free. There are risks, regardless of the good intentions. Have you contemplated that those outcomes will not come to pass in the future, and thought about it in regards to this particular forward-looking analysis?
So as part of any purchase, we look at risks and opportunities. I think we're pretty confident in the need for the new types of facilities and the industry investment that's available to help contribute to those, as well as the government contribution.
Does that exhaust your questions, Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Addis?
Thanks, Chair. Excuse me, thanks for your presentation. I'm turning my mind to the car parking you're going to be providing, the 37 parks. How will that be allocated in a way that the community is aware of them and will feel that they are their parks, that they are available? Because in a sense, all you're doing is reallocating, you're not actually creating more parks. So I'm just trying to get a sense of people will know they're there or feel they've been compensated.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So just to take the Wakefield multi-deck car park by way of example, we have large signage that shows that car park's available till late at night for all members of the community. It still experiences quite high vacancy rates on the weekend, and as I mentioned, on a Friday it's up to 50% in terms of the casual car parking that's available. We're open to more wayfinding and signage so that members of the public understand that car park is there. It's reliably managed by a third party. There's after-hours security, CCTV. It's a very safe facility in terms of the coverage of the cars, the cameras, the security, and the ability for people to be available after hours. So we believe that the signage there's probably something more to do. We can improve the signage, but there is that signage there and it is completely open to the public. And with any development on Serpils Lane, should the university be successful, the same thing would apply in that parking would be available to the community. Like, once again, there'd be after hours access, CCTV, safe and secure.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you for your presentation, and I wanted to ask some questions around student numbers. If you can help me out, and I certainly understand if you don't have the specifics answer to the questions I'm about to ask. So you mentioned that you had 30,000 students enrolled, and I guess what I'm wanting to get a sense of is what is your projected growth in students? That's one question. And then the other question I had was, you said students are returning to campus. Have you tracked that return to be able to quantify it? Those are my two questions.
Thank you. So in relation to the second question, the university, so both for our vocational education students and our degree higher education students, we've required them to be on campus via timetabling. So in terms of any coursework that they're doing, they're all 100% timetable to be on campus. Now, of course, a student may choose not to come to that timetable class or tutorial as required, but that would mean then that they're not successful in passing. So we're very confident that at some point the students are on average attending, a high proportion of their classes and classwork activity, as well as attending the late lab. We have about 6,500 students weekly who attend our 24/7 late lab at the moment. And once we build the new facility, which is going to be much bigger, we're sure that that will increase. In terms of the first question, which was, the student numbers.
You've got 30,000
so we've got 30,000
enrolled.
students enrolled. So approximately just under 9,000 students are studying online, and then they might come to campus if they're in Victoria to use the library facilities and other facilities. In terms of growth, the growth projections for the domestic market are sort of 3 to 5% year on year. So the Costello baby boom children reached 18 years of age, and so the VTAC market in Victoria has actually increased. Now, having said that, we are seeing a mix with people taking different loads because they're choosing to work because the job market is so strong. But in terms of the international student numbers, they're back actually exceeding pre-2019 levels, and that's actually throughout Melbourne and throughout Australia. So we're very sort of conservative with our growth numbers in students. Like I said though before, it's not just the student activity, it's also the significant investment the university is making in research, in commercialisation and in industry collaborations, and different research models call for different things, but the state-of-the-art research facilities we have are really bringing people to campus, particularly in manufacturing industry 4.0.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have Councillor Hollingsworth, followed by Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I'm just going to pick up where Councillor Addis left off with regard to the 37 supplementary car park provisions. So you mentioned Wakefield Street, is that correct? So that's a multi-level car park. And I just wanted to clarify accessibility for people with disability. So I assume there is a lift there for people that would have to use the various levels to get down to at grade level, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Right.
So the car park has 685 car parks in total, of which 564 are casual. And yes, it's fully accessible, and all lifts operating. And like I said, also if people are having any troubles at all, there's an after hours call out and security.
Right, thank you. And is there time constraints, or is it operated as an app-based fee, or how do you monitor parking there?
So there's at the moment it's a ticketing system, and you can pay with the machine on the way out. So at the moment it's capped at a daily rate of $10, 0 to 2 hours of $4, and 2 to 3 hours of $5. The important thing to mention is that because we're servicing such a diversity in our university committee. We're very, very mindful to price sensitivities of students and to the car parking is quite sensitive with our students, so we certainly maintain the pricing at very modest levels.
Right, thank you. And you talked about Monday...
Excuse me 1 minute, Councillor. Could I just ask if the questions regarding various conditions around the Wakefield car park, are they directly related to Serpils, please? If you wouldn't mind just maybe fine-tuning that a little bit, please? Because we have had 2 more presenters' forms that had just got lost in the
yes,
bureaucracy.
directly linked to Serpils and the 37 car park provision.
Thank you.
And thank you. Just my final question, with your indulgence. So you mentioned car park availability Monday to Friday, Friday night. I just wanted to clarify it's also available Saturday and Sunday, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Right, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sinfield.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to our submitters, thank you for your presentation. I read in relation to the Section 173 agreement that's proposed of the 37 additional car spaces. Are they for general community use, or would there be any ability there to consider trader use within that car park?
We would be open to considering, at the moment it's fully open to members of the community, but we're open to consideration of anything really.
Thanks.
Thank you. That seems to have exhausted the questions. Thank you very much, Mrs. Collins and Professor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we do have 2 more presenters. Apologies, the forms got filed into the next meeting, but never mind, we'll keep moving forward. Mr. Romano Del Beato, followed by Mr. Sam Aldermere.
My name's Romano Del Beato. I'm a long-term resident of Hawthorn. And after that very extensive description of the functions of Swinburne University, I think I'll save you some time and cut to the chase. A group of us ratepayers, together with the Glenferrie Traders Association, have been arguing for the development of the Serpils Lane car park as a public space for over a year. During that time, we have been frustrated by 2 obstacles. Firstly, the lack of any creative or imaginative proposal for the land, either as a standalone project or as part of the placemaking process as an alternative to its disposal. And secondly, some extremely puzzling answers, or lack thereof, to obvious and basic questions about the council's past management of that land. As a result, we have become even more determined to break through to you, councillors, with a reasoned plea to, 1, resist the temptation of an ad hoc, quick and easy sale, and 2, to direct the council administration to integrate the future of this ideally located land into the placemaking exercise, thus providing an exciting proposal for the land's future use for the benefit of the wider Glenferrie community instead of just the university. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you, Mr. Del Beato. You may return to the gallery. Thank you very much. And I believe this will be our last presenter, Mr. Sam Aldermere. If you could, thank you, and just introduce yourself. Thank you.
Of course I will. Of course I will. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Sam Aldermere. I am a business owner along Glenferrie Road, have been for about 12 years. I own a Spanish restaurant, and I hope you all can join me there when we do not sell this car park and we can all celebrate. I am truly puzzled. It says 3.1, consideration of submissions and proposed sale of Serpils Lane car park to Swinburne. What I just witnessed with the Swinburne gang, you guys are talking about colour schemes and whether there's going to be vending machines in the classrooms. I mean, has it been already sold that I don't know about? Is that? I don't know. Seriously, I'm truly puzzled. Is it?
Mr. Aldermere, the word proposed.
So Swinburne have sent you guys a presentation and they've outlined exactly what they want to do with it when we're talking about whether it should be sold. That's what my...
That is the motion before us, is the consideration of a proposal to sell to Swinburne.
Okay.
You're You're well into your 3 minutes.
What
Would
I
you like
heard-
to use that time to speak to your views on the
From what I
motion?
heard, I think this is laid down as there. I think it's done, if you ask me. I'll move on. I represent 555 businesses along Glenferrie Road, Burwood Road. Our job in the association is to talk about how we can beautify, make Glenferrie Road a real good place to shop. All my council meetings, all my committee meetings for the past year has been Serpils Lane and what we're going to do and how we're going to fight this silly, silly rule to sell. We've met with your councillors nearly weekly. We've given them our take and the ears are just painted on, to be honest. I represent businesses and I have not heard one business who supports this proposal. I would love to meet somebody here in the gallery who actually wants it to be sold other than Swinburne, because I haven't met anybody. I think what you guys are doing is absolutely crazy. We need more car parks, not less. I can't be any stronger than what I'm just going to deliver, but it is just madness, if you ask me. Absolute madness. I think I'll stop there because I'm going to get really agitated. But thank you. Any questions, please? Yeah.
We do have from Councillor Thompson. Councillor,
I do indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do the traders have a view as to what you'd like to achieve? And when you say more car parks,
Yeah.
are you thinking it should be on that site?
We want the status quo to remain. If you ask me, I want extra. We have so many ideas within our committee meetings on how to make this prosper. We want to bring in marquee businesses to Glenferrie Road. For example, Taco Bell is a global business. They chose Glenferrie Road, Hawthorn.
So I might, sorry to interrupt there, just so the traders don't have a unified single view of...
The unified single view...
other than status quo.
The unified single view is we need accessible parking on the street. We need Serpils Lane to remain. We need more car parks. We don't need less. And why I'm saying we don't want less is because the place-making plan will shed 40 spaces along Glenferrie Road. Yarra Trams will get rid of another 40. Oakley Trading Association losing 10, and it's national news. I'm going to lose 150, nothing.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you. There appear to be no further questions. Thank you, Mr Aldermere. We now turn to officers for matters arising. Thank you.
No, through you, Chair, nothing further to add.
Mr Hutchinson, did you have any matters arising that pertain to your department?
Nothing further to add. Thank you.
Chair, can I just draw your attention? There appears to be someone in the gallery whose form has also been misplaced. If we might just pause for a moment while governance buy some time.
Thank you. Yes. Sir, did you complete a form requesting speaking? I'm sorry, did you fill a form requesting speaking time? You did. Okay. Well, we'll just wait for a moment and we'll get the officers to locate that form then.
Chair, in the interest of time, can we just hear from the submitter?
That would be an excellent idea, Councillor Park. Sir, would you like to take a seat and introduce yourself? Just to the microphone, please. We just turn it on. There we go. Now start, thanks.
My name's Giuseppe Gamendi, and what I'd like to know is why are we getting rid of car spots when it was Kew, Hawthorn, Camberwell, we acquired car spots. And now you're selling this car spot to Swinburne. Now, if I offered you $20 million tonight for that land, would you still sell it to Swinburne or would you sell it to my company?
I'm sorry, sir, you won't get an answer for that at this point. It has to be considered a rhetorical question.
Why wasn't it put to tender or to an auction? I'm interested in the land. All the shopkeepers are interested in the land. Why can't we buy it like we used to buy it?
I'm sorry, sir, they have to be considered rhetorical questions.
Yeah, fair enough. You can say whatever you like, but that's my point is, I want that land just as much as Swinburne. The shopkeepers, owners, want that land just as much as Swinburne for car park. So why? That's discrimination as far as I'm concerned. Where's the law now that we can't discriminate? Why can't we put a board there and auction the place? Or say to the shopkeepers, you pay it over 20 years like we used to pay it when it was Camberwell, Hawthorn and Kew. When I started as a kid of 14 years of age in real estate. That's all I got to say, because I think you're discriminating. And I give you guys over $250,000 a year in rates. And I think that's very, very discriminating what you're doing. You're making Swinburne better than me. You're making Swinburne better than the Glenferrie traders. You're killing us. You're putting your rates up, you're doing this, you're doing that, your land tax has gone to the sky. But, yeah, Swinburne gets everything, we get nothing. Sorry, thank you.
Right. Excuse me, sir, there appears to be a question for you. If you don't mind just taking your seat again. Councillor Watson? Oh, beg your pardon, the light was accidentally on. No, there are no more questions. Thank you very much, sir. All right. Any matters that require addressing that have not been addressed in the report, officers? No. We believe the matters arising have been addressed in the report. Councillor Watson.
I have a couple of questions and also would like to foreshadow moving a motion.
Thank you, Councillor.
Through you to officers, one of our presenters here this evening mentioned an agreement. Do you have any knowledge of an agreement between council and any body in particular in relation to that site?
No, we have no knowledge of any agreement, Councillor.
Can I perhaps seek some clarification? I think the agreement was used in the context of the car park to which the traders contributed, if that's what you're referring to. Is that what you're referring to? Yes. I think what's being said is that the traders contributed funds for the acquisition of the land, which comprises a laneway providing access to the car park. And in doing so, the view that's being put to you is that there's an agreement by the former City of Hawthorn, which would have implied that that car park would be ongoing as a car park, taking advantage of the access which is being created and funded from contributions by the traders. I think that's what's being said.
Thank you. There was also a comment made by one of our presenters that the lane will be effectively gifted to Swinburne. Are you able to provide any clarity about that particular comment?
I don't understand how one can say the laneway is being gifted when there is going to be a price to be paid if council chooses to proceed.
Okay, no further questions and happy to move a motion at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask, as a first question, to do with the council's strategy or principles or policy behind the disposal of council assets with regards to land. In fact, let me be more clear about it. Does the first line of that policy say, assets will only be considered for disposal where there is no clear council or community need for that asset within the foreseeable future?
Ms Montalto, are you happy to answer that? Or Mr Hutchinson?
Can you just refer to which principle you are referring in the papers?
This was provided to me by officers, and it's the policy in which you decide on disposals. I've got a copy of it here if you'd like it.
Perhaps while
Mr.
Mr.
Hutchinson
is looking
provided
at,
me
you're
with-
referring to what is one of our financial strategy principles, which basically says that council will not dispose of land if there is a need which council identifies in order to respond to a community need. And indeed, what's being said in this case is that to the degree there is a community need for parking, the first thing to acknowledge is that the bulk of the parking on this site is actually utilised by Swinburne University. That's the first point. Several surveys have shown that both pre and post the introduction of parking controls. The second point to make in relation to need is that the utilisation of this car park by members of the community other than Swinburne is at a level which can in fact be met in one of two ways, or indeed both ways. One being the replacement parking which is being required as part of a Section 173 agreement, the other, which equates, in fact, is greater than the level of community use on this car park at present. The other one is that surveys undertaken by council through an independent source have demonstrated there are 200 car parking spaces in this vicinity, in this shopping centre, which are indeed available for use. So if one looks at the question of car parking, there is no basis for forming the view that this site is needed for that purpose. So that's been, if you like, the analysis which staff have brought to this particular question in the application of that principle.
So can I take it that the sentence I read out is in fact confirmed, even though there's mediating factors? That is our policy at this point in time.
Our policy position absolutely is that we ought not be selling assets if we consider there is a community need for them.
Can I then move on to ask a specific question regarding the Section 173 agreement, which isn't yet an agreement, but it's the proposed agreement if the sale proceeds? That I understand that relates to the potential, there is no number of car parks specified in that, but it's very carefully tied to the future use of that site. So the number of car parking spots that would be provided by Swinburne under any future Section 173 agreement would relate to how they choose to use that, and that parking would only provide for the parking generated for that use. Is that correct?
Yes, so Swinburne would be required to provide the parking rate specified in the planning scheme for whatever the activities are to be accommodated on the site.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Stavrou, followed by Councillor Hollingsworth. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. I'm not sure how much of this officers can actually answer, but it helps me with my decision making. I'm talking about the three-dimensional scale of a proposed development that might be considered. So the urban development framework. What are the planning principles to which the agreement that is being put forward to us, how much will Swinburne be either exempt from planning with any future development, or have they given a commitment to comply, and to what scale are they capable of building on and developing that property?
I'll refer that question to Director of Urban Planning.
Mr Walker.
Thanks, through yourself, Chair. In regard to the requirements that apply to Swinburne University, in a pure sense, the public use zone that applies for Swinburne University does not trigger the need for formal planning approval. So that's how that applies to any university. That applies to any public use zone land that's allocated to the university. So the universities, in that context, needs to make decisions around what's appropriate type of development and scale of development for that land. In this particular case, what the university has indicated to us that they intend to meet the planning scheme requirements, and the concept plan, initial concept plans that have been submitted as part of the offer indicate a scale of building consistent with the planning scheme. I think that's in the order of 12 to 14 stories that the planning scheme specifies for that land, and there is an expectation in the 173 agreement that that concept plan be provided to and confirmed with council before development proceeds. And that concept plan would need to be in accordance with the Glenferrie structure plan, Glenferrie place plan, and any other planning requirements that council has set aside or put in place for that land and that area.
Thank you. Does that address your question, Councillor?
It does. I've got a couple of further ones, but that 10 to 12 stories or 12 to 14 stories, I didn't.
Did you want to pose another question?
I do, yes. Whilst our Director of Urban Planning is looking that up. Community benefit. Is there any agreement beyond the car parking that might be given back for the benefit of the traders? I don't know, it's a very subjective question. I'm not sure it can be answered, but in the Section 173 agreement, is the only benefit the car parking that's coming back?
I think Mr Walker is researching your previous question. Is that right? So we might see if Mr Storr is in a position to address that one if he is. Are you in a position to address the second question while Mr Walker researches the first question?
I think the only way really one could talk about benefit to the traders is essentially to look at the activity which is created by virtue of those who are in attendance or attracted to this site. Who potentially become shoppers in that centre for a variety of different reasons. I would suggest that's probably the most direct and most likely benefit. There may be others which go beyond that depending upon the actual uses undertaken there as it unfolds, but that's all I would offer at this stage because I couldn't go beyond that.
No, that's okay. And I presumed you were going to respond like that too, so thank you.
Mr Walker.
Yes, there's my understanding is that 12 stories.
12 stories, thank you. And very last question, sorry to take up the time. Given this consideration is selling to Swinburne, should council not resolve tonight, is this land highly desirable with regards to the current state planning requirements for housing density are close to public transport? So in other words, if this doesn't pass tonight, could it be put up for public auction?
Yes.
And does it meet the state's objectives for the land close to, I think there's the latest planning provisions actually increasing development within that area?
I think that whether we're having this conversation this evening or in fact a few years ago, the argument would be it's a sound planning principle to have increased density and proximity to public transport. So the answer would be yes, it could certainly fulfil that objective.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Now, I note that we still have questions from Councillor Stavrou and Councillor Hollingsworth. I need to note that it is 7:45. For the sake of the gallery's information, by our rules, we need to commence the next meeting before 8 o'clock. So if we have not resolved this matter within the next 5 minutes, I will be seeking an adjournment. We will commence the UPDC meeting. That will be adjourned and we will return to this meeting. So you may have to bear with us a little bit. We'll keep going for a moment though. Councillor Stavrou.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Look, my question is probably answered between Councillor Thompson and Councillor Gold, but I'll ask because I wanted a bit more clarity. If a lot of the traders have said that it's a net negative for them, pretty much selling it at all, they're opposed to the sale. And I'm a bit perplexed because there's a lot of work being done and a lot of good thoughts have been put together, but that perplexing thought, if I could put it more pointedly, if there is no sale, there must be a trade-off, a net loss. Can you quantify that in any way at all?
I think there are a couple of questions which need to be contemplated when thinking about a direct net negative, if you like. The first one of those may well be related to the loss of car parking. When you put that into a fairly objective analysis of data, what you can see is that in terms of available car parking spaces in this centre, the mix of the 37 being proposed and of the 200 car parking spaces which are currently available based on surveys undertaken in this site would lead you to the conclusion that indeed there is no real loss of available car parking. And indeed, it's interesting that this car park has such a high utilisation of Swinburne as opposed to traders and or consumers visiting the centre. The second way of thinking about it as a net negative is to contemplate alternative activities which might be undertaken on the site. And you've heard some discussion about the prospect of it becoming some form of gateway, if you like, or some form of public space, which is not something that has really evolved to a greater degree prior to this, but I guess what's happened is people's minds have been turned to the issue and they've had to think about how else might the site be used. So it could be argued that the failure to capitalise on that sort of a proposition in fact is a net negative. And I can understand how people would say that.
Does that address your question? Thank you. Well, it's nearly 10 to 8 and we still have 3 more councillors with their lights on indicating questions. I'm going to ask those councillors to please hold those questions. I'm going to seek a motion of adjournment of this meeting. As explained to the gallery, we go into the next meeting, urban planning. We will then defer that meeting and come back to this one. Please bear with us procedurally. Councillor Watson.
Happy to move an adjournment motion.
Thank you. Councillor Sinfield, did you have your light on next?
Happy to second that.
Thank you. I put that to the motion to the vote, please. Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Welcome everyone to the Urban Planning Delegated Committee. As you've heard from Councillor Gillies, we are needing to adjourn this meeting so that we can be within the times. So I will start by asking my colleagues for a motion to adjourn this meeting. Councillor Hollingsworth.
So moved.
Thank you. And Councillor Gillies. Oh. Councillor Gold.
Seconded, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gold. I put the motion for the vote. Those in favour? The motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, councillors. For everybody in the gallery and for those watching, this meeting will be adjourned.
Patience, everyone. I'm searching for a motion to reopen this meeting. Councillor it's a flurry of lights. Councillor Addis, I saw you first. I apologise. The screen reacts differently and it still has previous meeting data on it.
Happy to so move.
Thank you. And a seconder, was that you, Councillor Hollingsworth?
So second, thank you.
Thank you. And to the vote to restart the meeting? Thank you very much, everyone. That's unanimous. All right, we're picking up where we left off. We had 3 councillors with questions in mind, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Addis and Councillor Sinfield, in that order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question I'm just seeking clarification on, if perhaps one of the officers could respond. When Councillor Watson spoke about laneway access, I, just for the benefit of the gallery, wanted to clarify that the actual railway parade access will not be blocked with the proposed sale, that the public access along the rail line will still be accessible for everyone to use. If that could be just clarified, please.
I believe that's correct. Is it Mr Hutchinson?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. That's correct. That access will remain.
Thank you. And if I may, just one follow-up question for Mr Storer. There was mention of potential alternate use for this site, for example, whether the state would be interested in purchasing it for social and affordable housing. Could I just ask if you felt that the value would be applied to the site that has been put forward by Swinburne if it was for example, interested by the state for sociable and affordable housing.
Can I just ask clarification? Are you asking would we get more if we went to the state?
Yes.
I don't believe so. We have come to you on the basis of very thorough evaluation analyses, and in fact there's been a process of, if you like, involving 3 valuations. So we're quite confident that the position we have is a reflection of what would happen in the marketplace.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Addis.
Thanks very much, Chair. It relates to, I guess all of us would share the concerns of the residents who potentially stand to lose views with any potential development. My question relates to what extent can one expect to maintain open space when you buy a property next to open space, and is a building meant to be planned thinking that that space might not always be there? Does that make sense?
Yes, I might ask Mr Walker to address a part of that question, which I'll refer to in a moment. I guess the critical thing, I'll go back one step. It's important to understand, I think what's being said isn't so much about open space, but about privacy and perhaps views from the building. There is no protection of views, that's the first thing to notice. Nobody owns the view. So it would be difficult to make a case based on loss of view, if you like, particularly if there was some level of view maintained. In relation to the question of keeping the site open, as it is at the moment, it's probably worth just reflecting on where the current planning controls are. So what are they saying about that site, and how long have they been saying it? So I might just ask Mr Walker if he could comment on that, please.
Thanks, absolutely, through yourself, Chair, and thanks, Mr Storer. I think the context to reflect on the question around the expectations of protecting open space or protecting views or protecting outcomes really goes back to the rezoning process that the council has already gone through. And in that rezoning process, what the planning panel had to turn its mind to is the appropriateness of the zone of the land, the commercial zone of the land, and the development outcomes that could be achieved under that zone and under the planning scheme provisions. So the planning panel had to actually think through and address that question and form the view that a rezoning to a commercial zone was appropriate and would lead to a reasonable and acceptable outcome in the context of the development that's happened around this site and it already exists around this site. And as I've indicated earlier, what the Swinburne University has indicated is that they intend to meet the planning scheme expectations for development of the land consistent with what would be expected by the commercial zoning that the panel turned its mind to.
Can I just follow up? And it's probably for Mr Walker. We are as confident as we can be that A173, should this go ahead, will bind them to following something that potentially they wouldn't otherwise be obliged to follow?
Mr Walker?
Again, through yourself, Chair, and I think what the 173 agreement has done is put an expectation for a concept plan to be put to the council prior to development taking place. And it's really trying to strike a balance of what's appropriate and acceptable when land is being sold to the university, giving the university still the flexibility within its university zoning, whilst also demonstrating that the outcome will be consistent with the Glenferrie Place plan, the structure plan, and reasonable development for that land. So it's not a formal binding requirement under the 173 agreement in a strict sense, setting a planning framework that wouldn't ordinarily exist for public use owned land, but setting an expectation for an appropriate plan to be put forward to demonstrate how the outcome will be achieved.
Perhaps, Madam Chair, if I could add to that to say that if the question is to what degree can one rely on a Section 173 agreement to deliver the outcomes which are specified, it is a fact that there is an opportunity for applicants to seek to vary or modify the terms of a Section 173 agreement. That then becomes a matter for a VCAT hearing. When we've had this conversation with lawyers in the past, their general rule of thumb is you can normally have a reliance level around about 85% on an agreement, but none of us can sit here and say that the terms of a Section 173 agreement would never be able to be challenged. That's not something we could reliably say to you.
I'm sorry, just one further to clarify. So arguably that would potentially be the case no matter who bought it, that it could always go to, they could apply for something, we could refuse and it could go to...
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Sinfield, and then we have a question from Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, so bear with me. As a follow-up to Councillor Galt's question in relation to the disposal of land by, or disposal of assets by council, I draw officers' attention to the top of page 7 in the current officer report, headed Property Holdings Principle, and that's where the reference came from. So keeping in mind that it says assets will only be considered for disposal of sale where there's no clear council or community need, etc. I wonder if officers might provide advice as to whose responsibility it is to decide on the future strategic need and use of parcels of publicly owned land.
Well, I guess we're here tonight because it's really council's role to do that. Your commitment under that principle is to forming a view about whether such a need exists, and the decision you make tonight will reflect where you stand on that question.
Thank you. In relation to trader car parking, Councillor Thompson flagged a question earlier, but I wonder if officers might be able to highlight for me the opportunities presented in Camberwell Junction for traders as opposed to Glenferrie in relation to car parking provision for traders.
Can I just clarify, are you asking how many car parking spaces are provided for trader parking in Camberwell Junction as compared to Glenferrie?
I'm not expecting officers to know off the top of their head exactly how many that might be as a quantity, but is there an equality of provision for traders in our different shopping precincts?
I wouldn't be able to say that such equality exists or even what equality would mean in that context, having regard to the differences between the two, both in terms of gross leasable floor area, the amount of employment and office activity conducted within each of those centres. They're very different in that regard. So I wouldn't be able to give you a clear response to indeed how one might equate them.
Thanks. That, I think, finishes my questions.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry to ask this one, Chair. Just item 1, sell the property. Item 2, I'm assuming follows the sale, so that's an action for the university to come back to us with their vision, which then reflects in the Section 173 agreement, or is it the other way around? Do they? Well, it can't be the other way around, not by this, but is it perceivable or possible that it could be considered the other way around? So in other words, could Swinburne come to us with their vision for this site, which then informs the Section 173 that informs us or allows us to then sell?
There's not really any obligation created other than by virtue of the sale. So You could take the view, if you wished, that you are not yet ready to make a decision about the sale and to seek yet more detail from Swinburne University in relation to their vision. Now, we do have some information from them, which Mr Walker's touched on, and perhaps if you needed more, there might be more to speak about, but you would need essentially to tie this very much to the question of whether you wish to make a decision to sell or not. If not, and you want to be able to make a future decision contingent upon the answer to that question, then what you would do tonight is defer a decision and seek that further information from Swinburne. The alternative is it's triggered by the sale and then you get the information as part of the Section 173 agreement. So I'm not sure whether it would help you if there's something more to be said in relation to the vision as they've expressed it up till now. We can briefly go through it.
Subject to, we've obviously got a mover or foreshadowed. I'm not sure what is being moved, and subject to whether that being successful or not, maybe if I could capture your thoughts in an amendment.
Are you proposing, do you want to wait and see?
I don't know what's being
We're not quite
suggested.
at that point yet, I think, Councillor. Yeah, thank you. I think at this point that exhausts the questions. Councillor Watson, you foreshadowed a motion.
Yes, thank you. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
And do we see a seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth, I think, was quick off the mark with that one. Are you prepared to second?
I am, thank you.
Thank you. To assist the mover, is there any opposition to this motion? There is. Councillor Watson, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would, thank you. We've heard a lot of presentations from our community tonight, and I thank them for coming in and letting their views and feelings in some instances be known. This is part of the process, and we thank them for engaging with it. Now, what we're talking about tonight is a piece of land that has a public use, and what is proposed is for it to take on, should this motion be supported tonight, an alternative public use. We've heard a lot of talk about net loss, not much in terms of net benefit. But let me just talk about a few of the things that struck me as I was listening to the presentations. So when we're talking about car parking, traders do get very concerned about it because when parking gets harder to achieve, then it makes it less likely, people will go where there is less resistance to shop. So I do understand traders' concern in that regard. And it's also very quantifiable as to what this change will mean. We know who parks there, we know for how long. We can come up with a number of people that are affected. And we've heard from officers tonight to say that there will be no net loss in that regard. One of the presenters here struck me tonight with his plea to us saying that our children need to have a right to have a car park there. I have a different view. I think that it is a wonderful public use to have our children get an education there. That is the future of our country, and we have heard from Swinburne that they are growing, and that means the need for educational facilities are growing as well. We've also talked about the Glenferrie Place Plan, and Glenferrie Road is a place of vibrancy. It's not places, it's not fancy sidewalks and fancy bins that make a vibrant place, it's people. And by Swinburne having the ability to grow, thousands of students will come into the Glenferrie Road precinct and recreate, entertain themselves, they will eat, they will have memories there. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, if we could quantify that, and I know we can, that is net benefit. So I urge my fellow councillors tonight to support this motion because I think it's not only of benefit to Burundara, it's also of benefit to Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollingsworth, as seconder, would you like to speak at this point?
I'd like to reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galt next.
Thank you, Chair. I've already drawn our attention tonight to the guidelines or the policy Council has with regard to disposal of council assets, and I believe that what's being proposed and what's being moved tonight absolutely flies in the face of that. Let me clarify, and I was guilty of saying our problem is 32 spaces for much of this year, but since we put the meters in, it is clear that those from Swinburne that park there are prepared to pay for those meters and still pay. In fact, I understand the proportion of people from Swinburne that park in that area has increased as a proportion. So I think what we're dealing with is the displacement of 89 patron spots in that car park. And look, my position appears to have changed in this over the months, but I don't think it has. It's refined, because I have always argued that if we're going to sell this, and I could see a lot of merit in doing that, we had to first ensure that we replaced these spaces. But I don't believe that we're doing that. I mean, I realise that we cannot tie any funds raised in this to replacement parking. Otherwise, I might have taken a different position tonight. And in fact, I'm also persuaded by later this evening in a separate meeting, we will be looking at a proposal to sell a further piece of council land to support the construction of what would be the replacement car park. So the money from this clearly isn't doing that. So tonight I'm objecting to this sale because I don't think it will be replaced, and I think we will be short by almost 90 spaces, by many of them coming from Swinburne, but those people will head off, those parkers will head off down to Wakefield Street, Park Street, Lydiard Street, and will park in those areas. Sure, there's a Swinburne multi-level there with some space in it, but it hasn't been popular. It's got a high vacancy rate, and people will make their way to the more comfortable, amenable, ground-level spaces. Hence my objection tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Addis.
Thanks, Chair. As is often the case, it is a complex decision, and I have thought carefully about it, and I do believe that the motion up on the screen is actually to the benefit of the broader community. And while we've heard from people, presenters, that there is a clear number of people against it, I think that makes sense. People fear that there won't be parks available for them. But what I'm hearing is that, in fact, there are parks, and Swinburne will go some way to all the way to replacing the parks that are not used by them, and hopefully encourage people to park in their car park, as Swinburne people should. So people always tell us that they want us to provide more. They don't want to lose things, and I think we can understand that, but this is part of a bigger vision of revitalising an area, and overall, my view is that this will do just that. It will actually benefit the community in perhaps ways we can't yet imagine. So I do support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sinfield, followed by Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Stavry.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be supporting the ward councillor tonight, who I'm pleased has listened to his community. We've joked a little in jest that it's taken a little while for him to hear the community, but alas, we got there in the end. I'm also voting in support of our local traders this evening, who have presented to us on numerous occasions. As we heard earlier, it's our responsibility as councillors and as the council to think strategically to future-proof this precinct. It's our failure to bring a lack of vision to this table and to not think about how we can use this space to better deliver for our community into the future. Mr. Scholwreck said in his remarks that we are the custodians for public good, and that we are, and we should be. The fact is that this underutilisation of this parcel of land is a problem for us. We need to optimise the use of that land, whatever that might be, turning it into a park, delivering it for car parking, selling it to a developer may be the best use of that land to deliver on the state government's housing strategy. We need to ensure that we make decisions that are financially and socially responsible. Theme 7 of our community plan, our 10-year vision, is to ensure that decisions are financially and socially responsible. And I don't think selling this land is. We've shortchanged our community with this proposal, and it's incredibly short-sighted. 74% of the community, that's just feedback that's embarrassing. 74% disagree with this proposal. Now, the state government housing statement sees our neighbourhood as being in the top 10. The Minister has delightfully called us one of her top 10 projects in the top 10 activity centres in her housing statement to deliver 60,000 dwellings. Now, this site is 2.1 kilometres to the Camberwell Activity Centre, and I think that's absolutely within proximity to deliver upon the 60,000 dwellings that are needed. Our population in Melbourne is expected to exceed 10 million by 2051, according to that housing statement. Now, Council said that we are committed to delivering diverse housing stock. And if we were serious about that, then perhaps selling it to a developer to deliver on apartments is the way to go instead of selling it to Swinburne. And I agree that it should go to the open market. If we were serious about supporting our local economy, we would not proceed with this plan. I don't want us to be all talk. It's just out of step with community expectation. And fundamentally, I believe that we are the custodians of this public land, not only this parcel. We've been entrusted by our community in 2020 to do the right thing for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be brief. The Mayor's pretty much summed up my view that this is a lazy asset, and I think there are a lot of other opportunities out there for the social good that could be explored, which we haven't explored as yet, so I don't know if we should necessarily be jumping at the first open checkbook for this site. I don't think we need to rush into making a decision either, and I'm yet to be convinced that we're making a decision for 2050 or beyond in terms of this land use, and I think that's just something that needs to be considered. I'd much rather the university comes to us with their vision and we consider it at that point.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stavrou, followed by Councillor Park.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Look, I'll be brief as well. I can see the dilemma. The dilemma is quite a hard one in this one, but having thought about it and the thought process that has been put in front of us, I understand why the traders are finding it difficult, because they want to keep an option open, but we haven't seen anything very specific for quite a while that these deliberations have been going on. Keeping an option open is really not really always valuable. It just means that we don't do nothing forever. But I do understand why that would generate that feeling, because the fear of losing the asset forever. I think Councillor Watson, as the mover, put it very well, that what we are about here is to have one public use versus another. Education is the other public use. And for me, and the questions that I wanted to ask were really going towards that, because I think that if we can tighten the 173 provision in some way, that actually does provide a very fixed and clear, unambiguous way, notwithstanding that it can be challenged, that would make it easier for me to see that we are opening the public use, where it's going to provide multiple benefits for education, but also flow-on benefits for traders and the environment, and possibly linked to the placemaking afterwards as well. If we can do that with the 173 provision, to put something that will actually explicitly provide an intent that highlights that very clearly and unambiguously, that would make me more comfortable to be able to support it. Otherwise, I would support it in that regard. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Park.
Thank you, Chair. The Mayor suggests that 74% of the community is opposed to this. That's not the case at all. 81 submitters were opposed to it. That's very different. With just over 100 submissions received, this is hardly representative of the broader community. It simply can't be asserted with any slight degree of seriousness. The suggestion that we ought to be selling to a developer, well, unless Santa Claus has gone into the development industry, I'm not sure how any of the councillors who are suggesting that think that council would achieve a better price. We've all seen the valuation reports. When you take into account how we are fettering development by imposing specific requirements upon Swinburne, imposing those requirements upon any potential developer would make the site quite unattractive and worth much less money. We'd also see a situation where there'd need to be rezoning, where council would be exposed to the windfall gains tax. We'd need to appoint and pay agents, pay marketing expenses, none of which would be insignificant. So to suggest that we're jumping at the first open chequebook is just utter nonsense. This is a point that is arrived at after months and months of consideration, extensive reports, public consultation. And the public consultation is just that. It's consultation to assist us in forming a position. It's not a poll. Otherwise, there'd be no role for councillors. We're here to make the tough calls. We don't subcontract that to 109 submitters. It seems to me that, and I adopt the comments of Councillor Watson, perhaps the best investment for the future is to see Swinburne, our local university, succeed and flourish. I'm convinced that the motion before us is worthy of support.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollingsworth as the seconder.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I wholeheartedly support the words of Councillor Park. I've read the officers' reports and I thank them for the great degree of detail they've provided for us. I have given this matter great consideration and deliberation, and I have listened to the gallery and read the emails and presentations put forward. I believe on face value that the residents that spoke this evening out of concern that they would be subject to the loss of view and potentially the loss of what may be undesirable. Picking up on what Councillor Park said, if this site was utilised for a larger housing development, I would anticipate that the outcome would be potentially even more catastrophic to those people that are very concerned about the impacts of them in their immediate proximity. Look, we are fortunate that Swinburne is ranked as one of Victoria's leading universities. It has an excellent reputation and it is renowned for attracting local and international students to the campus. Students of all ages and stages of life, and students of varying ethnicity, and people that can bring a wealth of culture to our area. People that are inspired and motivated, engaging, and will support the activity centre. And that is going to help value add to the Glenferrie Road shopping precinct. It will help resuscitate what is at this stage in decline, as a lot of activity centres are due to economic downturn. We as council have to make a decision of what's in the best interest holistically of our entire community. And there is the potential for the sale funds to go towards the redevelopment of the Glenferrie Place plan, which will make this centre come alive and be more vibrant and more desirable and attract more people. And that in turn will support the traders. So I see this as a positive opportunity, working holistically for the benefit of all. And I just wanted to add also that with the state government rate cap, council are only at a 3.5% cap increase going into, or cap rating going into this financial year. That makes no allowance for population growth as demands for service and infrastructure renewal increases. So to be in a situation where we have a parcel of land that is an at-grade car park of no desirability, it's an opportunity to potentially utilise that money or some of that money to go into the place plan for the benefit of all. And if I may just add, I'd like to raise an item in general business just to do with how we can potentially wayfind car park opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That exhausts the lights. So return to Councillor Watson as the mover to wrap up, please.
Thank you, Chair. I thank my colleagues for their different comments and their point of view, and want to reiterate that this is a public use, and we are considering a new public use. And I believe that unlike our Mayor, who didn't feel that this was visionary, I find it very visionary that we are able to consider a change of this nature, that we are able to contemplate such a move that looks to the future of our children. And there is nothing more valuable to a nation than education. And so I urge my colleagues to support this motion. I understand that change is hard and change requires courage. And I lean into the remarks of Councillor Park when he said that we don't subcontract the decisions that we need to make to or outsource it in any way. We consider the comments that come to us, but in the end, we're elected to do the job. And the job in this instance is to decide this motion that's before us today. I believe that there are enormous benefits to this motion, and I was very delighted to be able to move this motion this evening, and I commend it to my fellow councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Thompson, I'm not sure if your hand is up or not. It's not. Thank you. And those opposed? I declare the motion carried.
Call a division.
Councillor Galt, did you want to add to that or speak to that?
I'm happy to support that.
You have to go through. All right, we're going to call a division. All those in favour? Councillor Park, Councillor Watson, Councillor Sinfield, was there something to remark on?
The ward councillor may have reconsidered his opportunity in front of him.
I was supporting your previous move.
All right, we're in a division. All those in favour of the motion, Councillor Park, Councillor Watson, Councillor Stavrou, Councillor Hollingsworth, Councillor Addis and myself, Councillor Gillies. Those opposed to the motion, Councillor Sinfield and Councillor Galt and Councillor Thompson. Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We now move on to item 3.2 on the agenda, the Climate Action Plan Implementation Plan 23-24 to 24-25. This will be presented by Mr David Shepherd, Manager of Environmental Sustainability and Open Spaces, accompanied by the Director, accompanied by Mr Daniel Freer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present the results of recent consultation on the draft Climate Action Plan Implementation Plan and put forward the amended plan for adoption. This implementation plan is the second plan for the delivery of Council's Climate Action Plan, which was adopted in 2021. It'll be delivered over this financial year and next financial year. There's a large number of actions contained within the implementation plan, with funding to support these actions coming from the $1 million budget allocation for the Climate Action Plan and other operating and project budgets. There were only 41 responses received from the community. Of that, the majority was positive feedback seeking more action from Council. This has resulted in some changes to improve the implementation plan. The feedback and responses to that feedback is included as attachment 2. attachment 3. The revised plan is included at attachment 2 and is now in shape that we can deliver and that will continue to drive council and the community towards the ambitious targets of the Climate Action Plan. The officer's recommendation is to adopt the Climate Action Plan Implementation Plan for 23-24 and 24-25, and I commend that to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we have 5 people who've indicated they wish to make a submission on this matter, 3 against and 2 supporting the recommendation. Once I have announced your name, speakers, please come to the top of the horseshoe table, take a seat and introduce yourself by name and suburb. I will remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak. There will be a bell at the 2.5-minute mark. We have Mr. Lee Norton, followed by Dr. Julie Mulhauser. Is Mr. Norton in the gallery? Oh, there you are.
Good evening, councillors and staff. I'm Lee Norton from Bulwer North. Thank you for the opportunity to address council on this not just important but critical matter. Since council declared a climate emergency, it has become abundantly and alarmingly clear that we are staring at accelerating climate catastrophe. So what is our response to this in the city of Boroondara? It looks like, in relation to reducing community emissions, it is at best a token commitment. If you are serious about climate action, please give the plan the organisational status and dedicated staffing it requires to drive change through the organisation and out into the community. If this were an emergency of immediate consequence, like a devastating earthquake, the response would surely involve council decisively leading the community. This is the same, except that it's coming in year and decade spans, not in hours and days. Yet you have set aspirational targets for reduction in community emissions, which are more than 95% of the total for Boroondara, have a supporting measure of 50,000 kilowatts of additional solar PV community installations by 2030, without, as far as I can find, reporting against it, and dole out small grants after long delays to a community group to assist the community to meet the targets, without employing sufficient people yourselves to effect the large outreach program required. We find in the annual report that the percentage reduction of community emissions compared with 2020 emissions forecast was 14 to 18% for 2022-23, and the result was only 10%, with the bland and misleading comment, and I quote, "Council is providing education and programs from the Climate Action Plan to support our community to achieve this aspirational community target," as though it's really nothing to do with the council. At last, in this implementation plan, we have 6.2, deliver a community education program with a focus on reducing greenhouse emissions. But this looks worryingly like too little and too late. All this points to a failure to treat the climate emergency as really being one. Councillors, please do not pass this. Do it better with real community and expert engagement so it has transformational power needed to go some way to meet the emergency we all face.
Thank you, Mr. Norton. There do not appear to be any questions. Thank you. You may return to the gallery. We have Dr. Julie Mulhauser, followed by Mr. Graham Ross, please.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. You can pass those around too.
And if you'd be kind enough to bring the microphone closer to yourself, that'd be great.
Thank you. So my name is Julie Mulhauser. I'm a resident of Canterbury for the last 20 plus years. I'm also a health practitioner by background, and I have a long-standing interest in climate action, home energy efficiency and electrification, with my family completing a retrofitting of our 1970s home in early 2020 to achieve net zero. We now produce more energy than we use, and it is a case study for the Sustainable House Day. I've also been a community campaigner for federal and state independent community candidates and recently campaigned for the Voice to Parliament referendum. I've knocked on over multiple thousands of households within Boroondara over the last 22 months. I also recently completed the Sustainable Leaders course, where I learned about program logic and its importance in achieving outcomes. So according to program logic, the Climate Action Plan implementation is missing multiple critical elements, such as adequate resourcing. Less than half the allocated amount, which is only 0.3% of the total budget, has been spent, and there has been no staff increase. There are no outputs, there are no short or intermediate impacts, there's no data, and there's no evaluation. This is standard program logic. The feedback from the community pointed to these flaws repeatedly. The Council's reasons for refusing to include these critical elements wouldn't pass muster for even the humblest program. Yet this is what the City of Boroondara has presented to residents and businesses as a supposedly satisfactory response to the urgent, serious, complex and costly challenge of climate change. Additionally, the Boroondara Council makes the claim that the community emissions reductions are aspirational, with the clear inference that the Council's role in achieving these outcomes, which are only in 6, 11 and 16 years' time, is limited. Yet there are multiple areas wholly within the Council's remit, such as active and integrated transport infrastructure, EV charging at Council facilities, including public car parks, electrification of the Council-owned vehicle fleet, community engagement, and being a trusted source of information for the community, amongst others. A climate action plan is also a health improvement action plan and a cost of living reduction action plan. And my knowledge of community expectations from my extensive door knocking would say that it would lead me to conclude that top priorities relevant to the remit of local council in this area are effective climate change action, the operative word being effective, accountability and transparency, cost of living reduction, health and safety, safe, low-cost transport options, and a healthy environment. I urge the Council to amend the plan to make these changes effective.
Thank you for your presentation. There don't appear to be any questions. Mr. Graham Ross, followed by Mr. Michael Nolan.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to address Council. I'm Graham Ross, and I'm a resident of Glen Iris, probably for the past 25 years. Sorry, I've just lost it. I'm here representing the Kooyong Coot Alliance and the 20-plus friends groups that it comprises, who care for the Gardiner's Creek and surrounds. I'm a proud Australian with a Scottish heritage. I'm also proud to say that I live in the most livable council area in Victoria and the fourth in Australia. Boroondara, as you know, translates to where the ground is thickly shaded. Key to its livability is its landscape and natural elements. They're a key attraction to this area. I know because I moved here from Malvern with my family 25 years ago. In a bit of reminiscence, I remember watching Margaret Thatcher on the evening news in the UK when she addressed the UN in 1989, stating that of all the challenges facing the world in urgency and importance, the threat to our global environment is the greatest. that being climate change. She was not only the Prime Minister of the UK, but a scientist as well. That address made a huge impression on me, and still does. She was prophetic in her vision. So what Margaret Thatcher and the scientists foreshadowed nearly 35 years ago is coming home to roost. And Burndarra Council have acknowledged the Climate Emergency Declaration means that we need a strong leadership and a bold climate action plan. A key element for my focus today is that we need to invest in our green infrastructure. I could give numerous examples, but there's one thing that stands out for me. Small birds can potentially save hundreds of lives in Burndarra. Psyllids, and this is probably a bit late for a lecture, psyllids are small bugs that attack our eucalypts, weakening them and making them sick.
Excuse me, Mr. Ross, would you mind directing your remarks towards the action plan specifically, please?
Well, this is kind of leading to why we need bold action. Okay. So these birds protect the eucalypts and stop them from damaging themselves. And in light of climate change, it's absolutely critical that the canopy is kept as healthy as possible. By not investing properly in our green infrastructure, we run the risk of the eucalypts being weakened and getting dieback across the forest. This will impact on the urban heat island effect, and temperatures could increase in our suburbs by up to 6%. Burndarra currently has a lower heat vulnerability index than other suburbs, mainly due to trees. But this can change quickly. And we must be aware that the heat island effect is one of the biggest potential killers in Australia. And heat-related deaths are projected to increase by double by 2050. City of Melbourne is taking it seriously, is planting 3,000 trees a year. Burndarra falls well short of that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I'm sorry, but your time has expired. But you do have a question from Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Chair. Just one very quick one. Green infrastructure, I know from previous conversations that we've had, you're talking about biodiversity, both tree canopy and undergrowth. Is that what you mean by green infrastructure?
The key element is, yes, structure, both ground cover, middle story and upper story. Not just for flora and fauna, but for our mental, physical health and for the livability of the suburbs.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. That exhausts that. Thank you for your presentation. We have Mr. Michael Nolan, who will be followed by Mr. Peter Campbell.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name's Michael Nolan from Kew East. I've lived in Kew East for 27 years. I have a background in corporate engineering and project management, and I am here tonight representing Lighter Footprints. We know we have to stop burning coal to make electricity. That's happening. We know we have to stop burning gas in our homes. The Victorian government says electrification saves $1,000 for the average home and $2,200 per annum for homes with solar. We know we have to stop burning fossil fuels. It's bad for our pocket and for our sovereign security. Australians spend $46 billion, that's billion with a B, per annum in Australia on oil imports. $46 billion going to the Middle East oil producers and Asian refineries. Pro rata for Burndarra is approximately $111 million on petrol and diesel per annum flowing out of Burndarra. And this is a reference to Saul Griffith's two most recent works. So if our community also moves off gas in homes and installs more rooftop solar, households will be $3,000 better off in 2024. And by 2030, $4,400 better off per household. That equals $193 million per annum staying in the Burndarra community instead of flowing out of the community through fossil fuels. And I note that's about 12 times a $16 million land sale per annum. We thought the cap could be a good 10-year plan, but it is falling over at implementation. We have a 60% emissions reduction target by 2030. That's 6% a year for each year for 10 years. I want to focus on two aspects. First, the big disconnect with community emissions reduction and efforts across departments. And second, to emphasise the economic reasons to get on with it. First, we need a whole of council culture on climate action across all departments, just like we do with OH&S and like any corporate would do with OH&S. So the analogy with climate PDs and KPIs and discussed in performance reviews. So the plan mentions a lot of what needs to happen. We want to see 500,000 on 5 full-time equivalents and a capital program of 3 million per annum. And if we achieve 60% community reduction and we save 4,400 across 60% of households by 2030, we get to keep 193 million in Burundara every year. So by spending that 3.5 million every year, we save 193 million per year in our community. And to the next generation, we can say we saved households money, we helped solve climate change. This has always been an ethical challenge. It is now an economic imperative.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for
Nolan.
listening.
Thank you. Your time is exhausted. Thank you. And there appear to be no lights. Thank you very much. Our last speaker now is Mr. Peter Campbell, please.
Good evening, Chair and councillors and officers. My name is Peter Campbell. I'm speaking on behalf of the Burundara Bicycle Users Group. Burundara BUG commends Burundara Council for revising the Council Action Implementation Plan. We draw attention to e-bikes as a form of electric vehicle that can open up cycling to many in the community who currently don't ride a bike. Cycling is a fun and healthy activity, and every trip on a bike or e-bike is one less car on our busy roads. No licence is required to ride an e-bike, unlike an EV, a car or a motorbike. Every 1,000 kilometres travelled on a bicycle or e-bike can save up to 100 litres of petrol, depending on the vehicle, which translates to 230 kilograms of CO2 emissions avoided. I've recently purchased an e-bike and have done nearly...
Excuse me, Mr. Campbell, can I suggest you direct your remarks directly to the Community Action Plan, please, because time is running on.
Okay. Moving on to the specific recommendations. Recommendation 4.1, include e-bike and mobility scooter charging at council-owned and managed facilities. Item 4.2, include e-bike and mobility scooter charging at all council community locations. These are in excess of current recommendations. Item 4.3, expand use of bicycles and/or cargo e-bikes for council officer and contractor fleet trips. Item 4.4, expand use of cargo e-bikes in council's fleet. Item 4.5, include e-bike and mobility scooter charging, and we caution against provision of curbside EV charging that privatises public space and encourages more on-street car parking and prevents the construction of active transport infrastructure, including separated bike lanes and walking paths. Item 4.6, BBUG strongly supports this initiative. However, we'd like to see design work in progress for the Hawthorn to Box Hill Trail completed by mid-2024, noting that the completion of the design work for new off-road cycling routes is necessary to apply for federal grants, such as the Thriving Suburbs program. Item 4.7, there's no planned solution for students to ride safely to school in the northern region of Burundara following the removal of the Glass Creek Trail from the 2022 bicycle strategy. So we'd like to see provision for safe cycling and walking routes to access all schools in Burundara, and also to provide separation between cyclists and pedestrians where possible. Our final point is to commence a trial, this is item 4.9, commence the trial of an e-bike strategy, a subsidy and/or share scheme in Boroondara similar to City of Yarra, Frankston City e-bikes, and free cargo bike loans as part of Mary Beck's Ride and Stride program.
Thank you, Mr Campbell. Is that completion now?
Yes, that's it.
Thank you very much. And there don't appear to be any questions. So thank you very much for your presentation. You may return to the gallery. Thank you. Now we'll turn to officers and any matters arising, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of the submitters tonight. That feedback's much appreciated. Largely, I think what was spoken to is covered in the reports tonight, but I just want to mention a couple of items. In relation to the data and reporting, just want to highlight that we do intend to report more often, more frequently. This is highlighted in our report as well, and we'll provide updates on our performance, delivering the CAP through all of our media channels moving forward. In particular, we do have our Climate Action Hub available for people to access at any point in time. We'll make sure that is widely promoted, and that has updates on all of the actions that were undertaken, and we'll have information on our progress towards our targets as well. In terms of staffing, which was commented on tonight, we do have a large number of staff across the organisation and various different departments that have accountabilities for deliveries upon the delivery of the actions within the Climate Action Plan. This includes our Climate Action Lead, our Circular Economy Officers, Education Officers, Utility Officers, Tree Planting Officers, Sustainable Transport Officers, and our newly appointed Energy Transition Officer. In other items, I just wanted to, in relation to what Graham was raising around tree canopy and biodiversity, just recognise that Council has two key strategic pieces of work that are in development at the moment. So our tree canopy strategy and our urban biodiversity strategy, which will both come to Council to be released for community consultation early next year, which are both actions within this implementation plan as well. I think that's it from me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr Shepherd. We have a couple of questions. Councillor Galt? Yes, Councillor Galt.
Thank you, Chair. No questions. I'd simply like to foreshadow a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Watson?
Yes, a couple of questions. We've put aside some money, put money towards implementing the Climate Action Plan. Would you be able to give me a sense of how much of that money is dedicated to delivering tangibles? And I define tangibles like we're planting a tree, biodiversity increasing, putting solar panels on buildings, things you can actually touch and feel, tangible, versus the intangibles, which are broadly an education program. What's the split?
Thank you for the question. I haven't done that maths before, so I'm quickly trying to do it in my head now. I'd say it's probably roughly around a 50-50 split. So some of the tangibles are electric vehicle charging, our solar panels on council buildings, and scrolling down our list. I guess a lot of our capital works projects already incorporate environmental sustainability design principles, so works towards ensuring that those buildings are of the highest possible standard and function efficiently. So that's, sorry, not within the $1 million, but that's additional funding outside of that.
Thank you. Another question. Thinking about, well, following on from the question I just asked, intangibles. Now, thinking about the education program, and we have run education programs on other matters in council where the outcome was measurable. And I used the example of the education program we ran for FOGO, and the outcome of that was we had extremely low contamination rates in our bins, measurable, and also we had an increase in the diversion rate from landfill, again, very measurable. So thinking about the education program, and given that you have said half the money is being spent on intangibles, how do we measure what the benefits of this education spend and what are the benefits, measurable benefits of the intangibles?
Yes, thank you for the question. We do have a number of metrics within our climate action plan around those impacts for the community. Things like the amount of solar panels that are out in our community now. We're getting regular measures on that. We're getting information from our power companies about electricity usage, so we understand the usage of the community. We have data around water usage within our community and lowering that per person across the municipality. And we are obviously measuring community emissions as well and seeing a downward trend in that profile, which is one of the key targets within the Climate Action Plan.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, I think there's...
Sorry, in addition to that, we do have some of the process metrics around that, around numbers of participants in our programs and their satisfaction with those programs as well. So that is just part of our normal measurement too.
And one last question. You mentioned that there are a number of staff dedicated across the organisation that have in their job description delivery climate action measures. So my question is, does that represent a real increase over and above the $1 million that we put towards the Climate Action Plan? In other words, are we over-delivering and under-reporting the amount of money we spend on climate action?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I would say the $1 million is an understatement of the investment that Council makes in delivering its Climate Action Plan. And I say that because of not only the staffing commitment to that, but all of the other funding programs that we have in place, like our tree planting program, which is not included in the $1 million. The work that we do in circular economy, not within the $1 million. Plenty of other examples across the organisation of where we're investing in activities that are benefiting the delivery of this plan that are not included in that $1 million.
One last question, I promise. Could we quantify that so that we understand the true investment from Berridara Council in climate action?
We will be able to quantify the vast majority of that. We wouldn't be able to quantify every single dollar. For the example that I gave earlier around the capital works projects, it's difficult within that to give a specific dollar value, but we could certainly quantify the majority of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councillor Thompson, followed by Councillor Park.
Thanks for that, Chair. I think that quantification of that additional spend on climate action, a lot of that work was done in 2021 when we actually released this plan, if I recall correctly. My question comes up from the presentation of BBUG with regards to e-bikes. I note we've got an action item 4.8 which talks about e-bike charging infrastructure, and we've got our bicycle strategy as well. Is there something specific to an e-bike strategy and how we embrace that and how we deal with it? Because I know they've had good and bad results in different municipalities, and is there room within the Climate Action Plan wording currently to actually come up with a strategy as suggested?
Yes, the wording in the strategy is flexible enough that it certainly doesn't preclude anything like that happening, so it is something that we could undertake.
And do you think in the next 2 years that work could be considered by officers to come to councillors without needing to move a specific motion?
Yes, we believe that could be achieved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Park?
Thank you, Chair. Whatever happened to the it's mentioned somewhere here, I'm just trying to find it, the grandiose plan where the community was going to be able to buy its power collectively and all that. Whatever happened to that? It disappeared, died a sudden death.
Sorry, probably need more clarification on your question, Councillor.
It was such a standard. I thought you'd recognise it by that description.
Jim, are you suggesting the climate action plan or the implementation plan? Two separate documents?
No, it was. There it is. Where is it? The CEO doesn't recall what I'm
just wondering, are you speaking about the community battery discussion that was had at the point in time?
It's part of it, yeah.
Yeah, which we decided not to proceed with at that point, if that's the one you're referring to. There were also schemes, you may recall, Councillor, where solar panel providers were looking to actually have council support them and promote their business in our community as a way of increasing solar panels. So council has looked at those in the past as well, but again, not really become directly involved.
Well, yes, if I find the specific reference, I'll come back to you, but we hear from presenters that we're doing a woeful job. That was the message that I picked up. It makes me sit back and wonder if the $1 million would be better actually focused on core council business rather than what's apparently a frolic into failure. I mean, if we're doing as bad a job as we're being told tonight, then I just wonder why so much in the way of funding is allocated.
Would you like to frame a specific question, Councillor?
Yes, I'm leading up to it. Councillor Watson asked about quantifying how much is allocated through other means that derive the outcome that we purport to achieve. I thought that had been allocated a value in the past, and I didn't quite understand what Councillor Thompson was saying, but I think that was what he was suggesting as well. No?
No, I misunderstood your intentions with regard to the community banks, community power banks.
No, I meant your observation about
e-bikes,
the
climate action plan.
The financial commitment by council through projects and other means.
I know we quantified it because when we released the climate action plan, I actually referenced that in the presentation.
Yeah, and that was my understanding. I just would like to I'd like to hear, because that was really, I think, one of the questions that Councillor Watson was asking, and if we did put a quantum on that, I'd be interested to hear that.
We'll get that data to the degree we've already produced it and provide it to each of you. Just in terms of whether council's doing well or not, I think it's really important to recognise that there are two issues here. One is council's emissions, over which we actually have control. The other one is community emissions, over which we have no control but have some influence. And so in relation to council's emissions, we are effectively net zero now. So council is not actually a net contributor to carbon emissions in reality because of the things we've been doing. The community emissions are a much more difficult challenge because, as I said, what we have there is mostly influence, and that's what a lot of our programs are really aimed and targeted at doing when we're working with the community. Last year, we had well over 4,000 community participants in a range of education programs and so on, which we were running. in order to get our community behind the need to actually change behaviour. So council has in fact contributed a significant effort to trying to work with our community, and will continue to do that through the commitment you've already made. So I think that we've really got to recognise a lot of good progress has been made on that front. There's always more to be done. But I don't accept the proposition that council is either not doing enough or not doing anything.
And perhaps a follow-up question to the CEO. We often get representations referencing the financial commitment that council makes by way of it being expressed as a percentage of total budget. And again, tonight we've been handed a document which reads $2 million allocated, 0.3 total budget, less than half spent. I'd be interested to hear an observation about the quantum and the relationship to it as a percentage of the budget, and whether officer advice is that that's a sound approach to take.
I'm not sure that measuring the amount of money spent is the right way to determine whether you're having influence. It's more a case of what you're actually doing to try and achieve a change in community behaviour, and whether those things are effective. You could spend $1 million doing all sorts of wonderful things that make absolutely no difference, or you could spend $200,000 changing the community significantly in the way in which you go about dealing with them on these things. So I don't believe that looking at the monetary commitment is in fact the right thing to do. What we should be looking at is, what are we doing to make a difference, and is it having an impact? They're the questions I think which really matter the most. And so we approach it more from that perspective than we do from some arbitrary assessment of a budget percentage.
And finally, would you have any observation to offer about the implicit criticism that less than half was spent?
What's the percentage of spend?
We're certainly well over 50% spend come the end of last financial year. I think we were around 1.4 million out of the 2 million allocated at that point in time, so 600,000 carried forward into this financial year, which is all committed now, with works to be finalised in the next couple of months. The primary dollar value that was underspent was around the EV chargers to be installed for the public use. Those two projects are now well underway. Works have commenced in Hawthorn just in the last week. Works are not too far away from starting in Burwood Village as well, and that accounts for the vast majority of that money that was carried forward.
Thank you. Does that address your questions? Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollingsworth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be very quick. Just the questions asked by Peter Campbell with regard to the e-bike charging stations. I'm aware that we're in the process of installing electric vehicle car chargers, but do you know, or has it been considered, if we could adapt the chargers to also be compatible with e-bikes?
The chargers that are currently in progress to be installed don't have that capacity with them, but it is certainly something that we looked at through that process, and it's something that we'll continue to look at as we install chargers, and if the sites are suitable and it's cost effectively, then that is something that we should do.
Thank you.
Thank you. That seems to have exhausted the questions. We're now in search of a motion. Councillor Westgold, you foreshadowed a motion.
Thank you again, Chair. I did foreshadow a motion. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hollingsworth, you seconding?
Very happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. To assist councillors, is there anyone in opposition? No, there doesn't appear to be. Councillor Gold, would you like to address your motion, please?
Thank you very much. I would. Look, I move this tonight with a bit of reluctance, The early drafts of this implementation plan were beyond my expectations and rather excellent, but they've been a little bit watered down in the meantime, particularly around the area of having a more permanent exhibition and advisory centre for people, which I very much hoped we'd get in place. But that aside, I think the current implementation plan on the table is a great improvement on our previous 2 years, and I think we've just got to get underway. We're well into this first financial year and we need to get the spending happening. There's been a couple of mentions of staffing numbers tonight, and my understanding from consultation with the officers is whilst the numbers are the same, there's a different focus. There's more expertise in the area we need them to deliver this plan, and I welcome that, but we have asked and do expect for regular reporting on expenditure going forward, particularly to pick up the shortfalls of previous years. So I recommend this implementation plan to my colleagues tonight for support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hollingsworth, would you like to add remarks?
In the interest of time, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will put this motion to the vote. All of those in favour, please indicate. I pass that unanimously. There's obviously no objections. Thank you very much, councillors and officers. That takes us now to item 4 on the agenda, general business. Councillor Hollingsworth, you indicated an item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just with regard to the proposed and council adopted position to proceed with the sale of Serpils Lane, I wanted to ask if we could give thought to looking at the existing wayfinder signs to encourage our community to be aware of and to utilise car parks alternate to Serpils Lane to help develop a practice of getting used to using what is there so that there isn't going to be a loss experienced by community of sure of where they can go as alternate sites.
Thank you. The CEO will respond to that.
Yes,
Thank you.
happy to have a look at that. It's in everyone's interest we maximise the use of those car parks.
Thank you very much. All right, that item concluded. Thank you. We move to any items of urgent business. Councillor Sinfield has an item of urgent business?
No, I had one of general business.
Beg your pardon. Beg your pardon.
If that's okay, I believe that tonight is your last night chairing Services Delegated Committee as the chair of the last 12 months. So the Services Delegated Committee deals with issues such as traffic management, road closures, parking, family, children's services and youth services. So on behalf of Council, I would like to thank you for chairing the 7 meetings over this past year in good humour and with confidence to deliver decisions for our community on 15 agenda items, starting with our draft Economic Development and Tourism Plan last December, many sporting pavilions, 2 rounds of community grants, 2 oval reconstructions, several contracts and of course Serpils Lane not once but twice, and the climate action decisions tonight. So thank you for your contribution to facilitating democracy in the most livable city in Victoria.
Thank you for your kind words. That brings us then now to urgent business. I don't believe there's any items of urgent business. No. Any items of confidential business? No, there aren't. So therefore, I will now close the meeting. Before I close the meeting, I want to thank all of you who have joined us this evening, live and online, and I declare the Services Delegated Committee meeting closed. Thank you very much.